I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council, and tonight's recap might be a little long. I've got 8 pages of notes on top of some of my commentary. So let's start with the preliminary open meeting. We had an election integrity update with Collin County Election Administrator Bruce Sherbet. We covered several things, including for the upcoming May 1st local elections. Polling place protections related to COVID. There's going to be social distancing. There's capacity constraints are possible. Now, remember last year at the elections, there were enormous lines, but they moved really quickly because people were social distancing and they had the capacity restrictions. But lines that wrapped around the building and looked really intimidating moved like comparative lightning. There will be minimal handling of voter IDs, and you'll be able to use Q-tips for touchscreens. Election workers will have KN95 masks and the option of face shields, and disposable masks will be provided for voters who would like one. The equipment that's used in the election is certified at both the federal and state level and is thoroughly tested. All components are standalone. They don't have Wi-Fi, nor do they have remote access capability. Poll books to be uploaded are done over encrypted internet to communicate with the election servers. And we have both now in Collin County, we have both electronic and paper ballots so that for auditing purposes, we can match them up. And if there are any discrepancies, then they can be accounted for properly. There will be physical security. Bruce walked over several of the aspects that keeps everything safe. The ballots themselves, the registration sheets, there's redundancy built into several things for auditing. And there's a comprehensive count of everything. The number of curbside ballots, number of mail-in ballots received, number of in-person ballots cast and given on a given day. There are field techs standing by throughout the county to address technical issues. And there are still qualifications required for mail-in ballots. You have to be over 65, disabled, or out of town, and you have to certify that one or more of these is the case. And there has to be signature matching between the application for a mail-in ballot and the mail-in ballot itself. So the signatures on the two things have to match, otherwise it's invalid. And voters will have the option now to hand deliver their own mail-in ballot to the election department in McKinney. So that's if you don't feel comfortable putting it back in the mail and you have a mail-in ballot that you need to return before the deadline, and I guess you can go to the county elections department, but you can't go vote for whatever reason. We then moved on to the 2020 business survey presentation. This is a survey given to our business community in Plano to get their feedback about the quality of city services provided to businesses. There were 432 responses to the 6-page survey. It looked like most, if not all, were small to medium-sized businesses, no large corporations. There was a 4.7% margin of error in the survey. 83% said they were likely or very likely to recommend Plano for business. To nobody's surprise, traffic and roads was the greatest area of concern. And there was actually an increase in the customer service level, the perceived customer service level since the 2017 survey. 1/3 said that they thought the property tax is higher than in other cities. Roughly one third said they thought it was the same as in other area cities. 1/4 said they don't know, and the balance said that they thought it was lower. Now, it was brought up in the meeting that we have the second lowest taxes in the city, or in the area. That's not true. We have the second lowest tax rate, and we have one of the highest property values. So our actual tax burden in dollars, which is all anybody actually cares about, is average. However, I think it was 22% of survey respondents said that while they thought the taxes were higher, they got more value out of it than they anticipated. So that's one of my focal points, of course, is not only responsible taxation, but driving maximum value for the tax dollars that we do take. Then we moved into the fiscal year 2020-21 status report and the 3-year financial forecast. So this is basically to show how we have been doing from a financial standpoint as a city for fiscal year to date. The fiscal year started October 1st, 2020. So we're roughly in the mid-year point. It was noted that at the city level, a balanced budget is required, unlike the federal government, which can just keep printing money willy-nilly. The general fund currently has 44 days of working capital, which is $10.8 million more than the required 30 days. So we're in good shape, and I, of course, am pursuing the addition of a rainy day fund so that we don't just have a certain number of days of working capital, we have an actual rainy day fund with safeguards as to when we can pull it out and why, and what we can and should do with surpluses. Now, taxes, it's in the 3-year forecast, taxes would increase, property taxes on existing property owners would increase in the 2022-23 fiscal year if all bonds in the May 1st bond referendum passed and if those bonds were issued. Now, I had commented before that the ultimate amount of bonds we were putting on the May 1st ballot was a lot higher than I thought we were going to, and certainly higher than I felt comfortable with. However, they are all going on the ballot, and most of the categories are necessary. I think almost 60 plus percent, somewhere around there, percent of all the bonds proposed are for roads. Everybody knows we need the work. Many of our roads are at end of life because our city was built out in bursts about 20 to 30 years ago, which is the lifespan of a road. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The question is, does that much work need to be done in the next 2 years before the next bond referendum opportunity? So let's be realistic. Most bond referendums pass, especially when they're titled things like roads, public safety. Voting against these is probably not viable. You're certainly free to do it. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do, but the tack that I am taking on this, on the bond referendum, is because whatever I advocate, they're probably all going to pass. But the very best thing you can do is on May 1st, vote for council members and mayor who will not issue the bonds just because they were approved. Remember, a bond approval, if the bond passes on May 1st, that is permission from the taxpayers to spend, from the voters to spend that money. It is not a mandate to spend that money within a certain period of time. Case in point, we're actually going to be issuing this spring $67.6 million in existing authorized bonds, which is going to take care of all of the outstanding bond authorization that we have. These are bonds that have been authorized in 2013, 2017, and 2019, but we have not yet issued. So all the bonds, it's I think $386 million worth of bonds, might pass on May 1st, all those referendums. But you're being given a dichotomous choice. You go on the ballot and do you approve however many millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, or $100 million, I think it was 114 maybe, I gotta check my notes. But do you approve the $114 million, whatever it is, for roads? Well, we know our roads need the work. So you're faced with the choice of saying yes, 114, or no, nothing at all. It's not a good choice. What you can do is vote council members who will responsibly look at that money, look at the expenses over time and say, yeah, we absolutely need some critical road work. Maybe we need $60 million worth right now. Maybe we can wait on an additional $50 million and reassess when the time comes. And will not issue those bonds just because they were approved. Because let's also face it, a lot of municipalities, they take past bonds as just read, that they should just go ahead and raise taxes and issue the money because the voters approved it. Again, if the voters approve it, they have approved that they have given permission, not a mandate. It's not a requirement. So we have to, on a continual basis, make sure that we're treating your tax dollars responsibly and that we're providing the city services that make this the city of excellence, and that we're driving greater perpetual value for the tax dollars that we're spending. In the 5 years prior to 2019, when I was elected, property taxes on existing property owners in Plano had gone up 40%. Now, I don't believe there was anything necessitating that. So what I believe is the proper approach, and I ran on a part of my platform, was to adopt what was called the effective tax rate, now the no new revenue rate, basically keep taxes flat for at least 2 years in a row to get a handle on those massive tax increases from the 5 years prior. We've now done that, but the spirit of that needs to continue forever. We need to always make sure we're striking the proper balance between what we are taxing and what we are providing under the legitimate functions of city government. And part of that, I'll get to this in a bit, but I'll skip ahead. We are going to explore a mid-year raise for city staff because we did not give any raises this year. We kept income flat, salaries flat. And so to keep up with other area of the market, basically other cities that have given their staff raises, and to be competitive, we're looking at giving a 2% mid-year raise. And by the same token, we didn't furlough anybody in the city when the pandemic hit. We knew things could be financially tight, and they were. We made some dollars stretch, and we got an infusion of CARES Act money that helped offset some things. And we have to recalibrate as a result. But we didn't furlough anybody. But that's what we were able to do as a result of the financial infusion we had from years prior, but it's also how we're able to manage things on an ongoing basis. We can face uncertain times with an appropriate rainy day fund, hint, hint, and we don't have to shed city staff when we can manage by natural attrition over time. So this is really the long game, but it requires the constant responsible use of tax money to spend appropriately. So it was noted that the anticipated inflation rate is going to be 2% based on the Municipal Cost Index, MCI. And our sales tax in FY20 and 21 was about $85 million. By the way, because of the way the DART agreement is structured at the state level, anybody who wants into DART has to give up half of all the sales tax they collect, or basically 1%. We don't have to collect the other percent, but we do, for a total of 8.25% sales tax. So $85 million goes to us from the sales tax assessed in the city of Plano. $85 million goes to DART. That amount, $85 million, is down 2% over this time last year. And of course, this time last year, we were just getting into the pandemic. I talked about the salary increases. We are anticipated to have 8 new full-time position requests in next year's budget. And it was noted that all departments are going to start their budgeting process on this coming Wednesday in 2 days. Well, depending on when you watch this video, could be today. But I noted that the budgeting process has technically already started because City Manager Israelson has started growing out his budget beard. So 8 new full-time positions, some in public safety, some under CIP for other needs. We are in a very stable position financially, so we can look at doing this. And as a reminder, we have kept taxes flat for the past 2 years. The Water and Sewer Fund current balance includes an allowance for $500,000 for water leakage from the freeze. So basically, we're giving credits to residents for the water that they had to use to keep their pipes running, or that they might have lost through burst pipes. Lastly, the hotel and motel tax and the civic center revenues, they normally total about $12 million a year. It should come as no surprise that in the last year, they only totaled about $7 million. Obviously, a lot less use of hotels and dramatically less use of the Plano Event Center. It was anticipated that those are going to go up to about, even whether there were 12 million in the last year before the pandemic, they're going to go up to 16 million by 2023-24, I think it was. And so I've asked for the numbers that go into those assumptions. The dates upcoming in the budget cycle that you should all be aware of, and I'll put this up on my blog as well. August 4th is the grant funding workshop. Now, there are several grants that the City of Plano offers to various nonprofit organizations. First year I did this, I looked through everything to make sure that I thought the function of the nonprofit fit the legitimate purpose of city government. And it's not just, you look like a nice kid here, have $1,000. And yes, they all fit what I thought were legitimate functions of city government. August 9th, we will have the first public hearing on the budget. August 12th will be the budget town hall. August 14th will be a council work session on the budget. That'll be lengthier. August 23rd will be a public hearing on the budget and the tax rate. And I think, or maybe it's just the rate. And then on September 13th, that's when the final vote is taken for the budget and the tax rate. If you're waiting until September 13th to make your voice heard, you have missed the vote entirely. That's when the vote will be taken, but you should start making your voice heard right now, or on August 4th at the grant funding workshop, or on August 9th at the first public hearing on the budget, etc. In fact, you should make your voice heard all the time to all your elected officials. So, I already covered that. Oh yeah, not only are we looking at a 2% mid-year salary increase for staff to align with the market, but we are going to look at overfunding the police to make sure that we have public safety officers where they are needed, when they are needed. So in response to everybody urging us to defund the police, this is my preference, is to overfund the police. So deal with that. In the preliminary open meeting, we then had a Plano Housing Authority overview with Executive Director Earnest Burke. This bled into item number 1 on the regular agenda, which was the consideration of a 4% housing tax credit for the proposed development at K Avenue and Park. Real quick background on this. City of Plano received an offer last year to sell the land at K Avenue and Park, which we owned. It's a vacant lot. There is a discount tire adjacent to the land. It's part of the whole area. K Avenue and Park. It's right across from the DART station. And we were made an offer, it was somewhere around 20% less than market value by the Plano Housing Authority to sell. And council said, well, why the low ball? And we dug into it a little bit, and ultimately we said, well, we want to put this out for bid. It was noted that we'd only received like 3 offers on it in 20 years. And so we asked, have we ever asked for offers? Well, no. Okay, so let's put it out for bid. Let's see if we get offers. We did put it out for bid, and the offer at the time was like $800,000 for the land. It was, I think, a little less than we paid for it even 20 years ago. If I remember my numbers correctly. But anyway, we put it out for bid. It was said in the bid that we would sell to the highest bidder. That's a separate issue, which I've asked that we look at additionally, because the city is not in the land arbitrage business. We shouldn't be selling our own land simply to the highest bidder. We should consider a variety of factors. But anyway, the highest bidder happened to be the Plano Housing Authority again, this time with an offer of $2 million. So we dug into it a little more. And that proposed project came back for zoning request a couple months ago, a month and a half-ish, and that was ultimately approved with a zoning request for affordable housing. I will always use air quotes or actual quotes if I'm writing when I talk about affordable housing, because 2 things are conflated. Affordable housing is not simply housing that is affordable. It is taxpayer subsidized housing. That's what the term means when it's used in these arrangements. It is taxpayer subsidized housing. One taxpayer who is not getting any direct benefit is paying for somebody else to receive the benefit. So in this case, there are 2 things going on at the property at K Avenue and Park. First, they're applying to have the entire property removed from the property tax rolls. City of Plano, Plano ISD, Collin College, Collin County, all of it, by virtue of the fact that it is owned by Plano Housing Authority. However, Plano Housing Authority is not going to be getting the money from that. They're just going to be owning it. Due to the structure they've set up, the developer and the investors will be getting the money and the proceeds from that, and it will be subsidized by the taxpayers because nobody who lives there is going to be paying property taxes, not even through their rent, because the entire property will have been taken off the tax rolls, because the Plano Housing Authority is a tax-exempt nonprofit organization. And so it's the developers and the investors who are going to build this property and be able to offer rates at less than what they would cost on the market, who are, I feel, going to be the true beneficiaries. So that was one concern. And then they applied for a 4% housing tax credit. The way this works is we give it our imprimatur. What they actually did was they applied for a resolution of no objection, meaning we can object or not object, or we could support actively. And they take that to the TDHCA, Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and they apply for a 4% housing tax credit. They could also apply for a 9%, but that's competitive. It's a slightly different ballgame. They asked for a resolution of no objection for the 4%. That allows them to use tax-exempt bonds to finance the project and get a federal corporate income tax credit, hence the name. That's my understanding. So they're already not going to pay property taxes, and they're applying for additional tax credits through the state for federal money. It's all paid for by the taxpayers in the end. And so at the last meeting when this first came up, I made a motion to deny, which I ultimately withdrew and instead made a motion to table because I wanted to see our actual policy that kept being referenced. I still haven't seen it. I haven't seen an actual policy that says that we are supposed to grant the resolution of no objection if they check these certain boxes. What we did do, I went back and looked at the resolution we passed last year and the video from our old council meetings. We changed the process so that instead of staff simply evaluating the criteria, we had the Community Relations Commission evaluate the criteria, and we changed the criteria they were looking at. And we also changed the makeup of the Community Relations Commission to reflect this process. And then that would yield the recommendation instead of simply staff providing the recommendation. So the Community Relations Commission did recommend this, but I was looking for the policy that said we say we will go by the Community Relations Commission recommendation. I haven't seen it. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't exist, which is why we still have to vote on it in the end anyway. That's our responsibility. So there was a very long discussion tonight, and two agenda items got merged. One was just the Plano Housing Authority Overview, and there were many questions about that. One was the specific request for a 4% or resolution of no objection to the 4% housing tax credit at K Avenue and Park. Now, I did some math. They told us in the meeting and last week as well that the taxpayer subsidized rent amounts, because this was going to be tax exempt, would be $970 for a one-bedroom apartment and $1,164, if I recall, for a two-bedroom apartment. So I looked on apartmentfinder.com, and there were over 150 units available currently, presumably most of them at market rate, for a two-bedroom for under $1,164. Some of them down to $1,000. Now, it was noted in the meeting, yes, but they'll be getting a much nicer quality of apartment, a new apartment built in 2021, whereas for that price point, you'd have to be getting another apartment of lesser quality. And the investors benefit and the residents benefit, and so who wouldn't be for that? Well, the taxpayers who are footing the bill wouldn't be for it. So that's the big concern I have. If we're talking about affordable housing, there's the air quotes again, we should really be talking about a need for people who need housing and would otherwise not be able to afford housing. Not nicer housing, but minimally acceptable, safe housing. That's what we should really be discussing. And we really weren't at tonight's meeting. And that's why I voted against it. And that's really what drives my position on affordable housing to begin with. If we are truly to address a need, then we have to determine what represents a need. So what we determined here is that, and I did the math behind this during the meeting, the need for the subsidized units here is based on people who make 60% of the area median income. Median is the middle point, not the average, just the point in the middle. People who earn 60% or less of the area median income should not have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing. No, in an apartment, this includes utilities, basic utilities. So I did the math, and somebody who makes 60% of the area median income, which is defined differently for HUD, it's at the county level, so it's just a little bit less. I think it was $86,400 compared to the Plano area median income of $92,000. Still, 60% of that, and there is around, I think it was about $52,600. Again, I'm just going from memory. It was around $52,000 a year earnings, and that's household earnings, not individual. $52,000 and change a year. 30% of that would allow somebody to, I think that was around $14,500, maybe 15. That would allow somebody, that income level would allow somebody to pay the monthly mortgage on a single family home that is 85% of the average appraised value of a Plano home currently, with putting no money down. That's assuming, you don't already own half the house. So when we talk about the concept of, is this needed? Do people need it? I'm not seeing the need with the income in the area. Now, if you have somebody who is not, a high schooler working for minimum wage, but somebody with a family and they're working for minimum wage, even two minimum wage earners with kids, then they might have a genuine need for taxpayer subsidized housing. But simply because somebody makes a certain percent less than the median, 60% less than the median income is roughly 30% of all income earners. So wherever the median income is, 30% of them will always be at 60% of the median income. So that doesn't speak at all to whether they actually need somebody else to subsidize and pay for their housing. So that's the big issue I have with all of this, and why I have voted no to this at every stage of the process. And again, if there is an actual demonstrable need, I can be supportive of that. There are a variety of needs from a variety of people in a variety of ways. And some of those are legitimately the purview of government to address. Many of them are legitimately and effectively the purview of the community to address. The community addresses so many needs so effectively. That's why we provide tax exemptions for charities to promote charitable work. But in that case, we're providing a tax exemption for a company who is soliciting donations from the public, not simply taking tax money and giving it away. To whom, again, the overwhelming concern I have about this is not just the need, but the fact that it looks like with so many other apartments available in the area at the same price point, which are presumably not taxpayer subsidized, it looks like the lion's share of the benefit from this tax subsidy is actually going to the developers and the investors, not to the residents, who have many other choices. We then moved to the regular meeting. It was kind of jumping back and forth because we conflated items from the preliminary open and from the regular meeting. We appointed Paula Boudreaux to the Senior Advisory Board. Congratulations. We had several people call, and show up. It was refreshing to see people in the council chambers again. Thank you to everybody who came. We had many people comment regarding the Hoblitzel bike trail extension at Hedgecoats. Some were speaking against it on behalf of Montessori Children's House. Many were speaking in favor of the bike trail. I would encourage everybody to go back and watch my recap from January 11th. about 2.5 to 3 minutes in, I start speaking about this. We had a discussion at that meeting where we aired several of the facets of this in public that were hitherto unaired because all the discussion had been in executive session since there is pending litigation. That is a legitimate purpose for executive session under the Texas Open Meetings Act. So we agreed as a council to discuss certain aspects of that in public. That's now a part of the public domain. I included it in my council recap of January 11th. Please go back and look at that. Two of the overarching factors are lately a narrative has gained steam that a bike trail there would present a great risk to the children at the property and would be a hotbed for crime and pedophiles and all sorts of stuff. So two aspects to that. Number one, there were two actual eminent domain pursuits here to create the bike trail. One was settled without objection, and it's for the area that goes right behind the existing playground. Now, the property owner had plans since 2005 to build an extension. It's never been started, but there is an existing playground there, which the property owner said, okay, here's the land for the bike trail behind the existing playground. There was zero concerns about child safety with that exchange. She took the money, everything's cool. Second, on the existing property, bike trail aside, you can go park in the church next door at the back of the parking lot. You can walk probably 50 feet or so, maybe 100 feet through the wooded area, which provides good concealment. And there's just a little metal fence there. Anybody who wants to snatch children can do so today, bike trail or no bike trail. I pray nobody actually wants to, but it's possible from the west, next to the current playground. It's possible from the south, and it's possible from the east, although that's along a sidewalk and a road, so you're not as concealed there. Secondly, when the application was made way back in 2005, there was a provision that I discussed in the January 11th recap that if the property owner were to continue with her future development plans, she would then have to work with our engineering staff and dedicate, meaning gift for free, a portion of that land to the city to be used as the bike trail. It was in all the documents back then. The bike trail has been planned, the whole network has been planned for 40 years, and this was part of it. So she would only have to give the land if she actually moved forward with her development plans, which in the past 16 years, she has not. So the point came where the rest of the bike network was built out. And so the city came to the point where it said, okay, we're ready to finish this. This is the last piece to connect these two segments of the bike trail. And that's when we started down the offer path and the eminent domain. What would have had to come to us for free, we now started making offers on. So that's all detailed in the January 11th meeting, but that's where we stand now. And that's in the documents from 2005. And finally, this went lickety-split. We had an amendment to the 2019-2020 action plan required by HUD for the provision of community block grants and funding. We basically changed it to use CARES Act money to provide for homelessness prevention and homelessness response related to the pandemic. And then the next and last agenda item after that passed was to actually apply for the money. So that's this recap, 34 some odd minutes. I was right, that's 8 pages worth of notes and commentary. So thank you for tuning in. I'm Shelby Williams for Plano City Council. God bless.